Hey, everybody, welcome to Saturday Night Cryptids and Conspiracies. Got a new feature here on StreamYards, right down here, right there. Your comments will now be up on the screen with the rest of us, so you can be a better part of the show. We don't have to highlight your comment, it'll pop right up there. And obviously, we've already got two showing up. Papa Cotton saying this isn't a theory anymore. Well, now MKUltra it has been confirmed, and there's been a lot of people that have there's too much information out there. They have definitely said yes, we did this. This existed. But the thing that we're going to talk about tonight was the results of MKUltra. Now, they just said basically they were trying to stay ahead of the USSR and their brainwashing techniques that they had back in the Korean War. They started getting soldiers come back with communist leanings, and they're like, this must be brainwashing. And they wanted to get ahead of the game, and so they started. I think the first thing was Project Artichoke or something like that. But there's a couple projects before MKUltra that got folded in to MKUltra. But ultimately, what did it produce? What were they trying to create? And tonight, we're going to kind of like put forth the case that what they were producing were killers. And so to help me do that, let me bring on two partners in crime. Abby is still AWOL, wherever he is. We wish him well, but he's not here. So we can talk bad about him all we want. I don't think he watches the show anyway either, so we can just badmouth him all we want and have a good time. Anyway, it'll probably show up in the chat, but we'll find out. But let's start with this guy.
If it's no Scottish, just clap!
Hello. So it is the Badmouth Abbey show. That's why I'm here.
Well, we're talking about dirty laundry in America, so you might be a little on the outside of this. So
MKUltra sounds like a detergent. Here, wash your clothes.
Does. It really does. But the thing that they washed was not clothing; it was brains.
This is a brain.
So, it was brains. Yeah. Anyway, brains. Anyway, all right. So let's bring this guy on.
Sir, nobody worries about upsetting a droid.
It's because a droid don't pull people's arms out of their sockets when they lose. Wookiees are known to do that.
Oh, hello.
All right, Wookie. How you doing?
How are we tonight?
We are fine. We are doing all right.
Sweet.
And we are going to we're about to delve into some dirty laundry of some of the worst things that America has ever done to its population. All in the name of science.
Well, that's what they call it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like the lockdowns. In the name of science.
Human experimentation has a negative connotation. So,
right.
So basically, this is science. It's science anyway.
Sciencey, yes.
Science is science. Well,
Dr. Mengele,
back
science.
in November. right. But back in November 28th, 1953, in New York City, a man jumped from the 13th floor window of the Statler Hotel, and that opened up a can of worms. Various things happened. Various things happened over the years, but including his family getting called to the Oval Office, giving an apology by Gerald Ford and a payout and some documents to sign. And they didn't know what they were doing there, but it was something having to do with their father's activities. And then it turns out that that there's a book that came out, and it named their father as one of the project heads of something called anyone?
Mm-hmm.
The detergent.
It's the MKUltra.
It's right
says
there,
it's
guys.
detergent.
Right there.
I know. I'm
See?
taking the piss. I'm taking the piss.
See it right there.
It's a
There you go.
detergent, all right. It
All right.
cleans you
Well, their mother passed away, and under the guise of exhuming their father to bury him beside the mother, they had a coroner go over his body, his remains, and discovered that he was probably hit with a blunt object before he wound up on the pavement, 13 floors
and
down.
he landed back on his back when he hit the pavement. He landed on his back, and this blunt force trauma was at the front.
Yeah.
So
Oh, I see.
Yeah. There's a little shenanigans going on.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Right. And so they started pulling on a thread that eventually led to other threads coming to light, and we wound up learning about something called MKUltra. Now, MKUltra, I've got a video on this. Kind of gives an idea. So let me play that now. Here we go.
I was given a glass of Kool-Aid, and so were the other children. This Kool-Aid was spiked with LSD. It was horrible.
In the early days of the Cold War, the CIA ordered the creation of a secret program intended to find ways of mind control. They funded an army of psychiatric institutions across the United States and Canada to perform experiments on unsuspecting patients using psychedelic drugs, sensory deprivation, electroshock treatment, and more. The program was known by its codename, MKUltra. At the end of the Korean War, a number of freed American POWs came home seemingly brainwashed and espousing communist propaganda. American officials suspected that the soldiers had been subjected to what they thought were new communist mind control techniques. Alarmed by the situation, the newly formed CIA allocated $25 million for psychiatric experiments on human beings.
It was the most secret program ever conducted by the CIA in the United States. Patients at psychiatric hospitals, prisoners in federal institutions, and even people in the public were given drugs without their awareness or consent and experimented upon.
Initial projects within MKUltra included Operation Midnight Climax.
They established what were called safe houses, where prostitutes would lure men to these apartments. And then once the men were in the apartments, they were dosed with LSD. And then they were basically studied by CIA scientists, usually behind a two-way mirror.
Another common practice was the hosting and observing of LSD-induced parties with live music. These parties were called acid tests, and the culture that grew out of them played a key role in the development of the hippie and psychedelic movements a few years later. However, some of the most damaging experiments occurred at the Allen Memorial Institute in Montreal, Canada. There, under the direction of infamous Scottish-American psychiatrist Dr. Ewan Cameron, unsuspecting patients, many of whom had common ailments such as postpartum depression, were experimented on with aggressive drug cocktails and extreme techniques.
My father was a victim of Dr. Cameron. He was a 27-year-old, healthy skier, canoeer, very athletic, and he had asthma. They told him if he went to the Allen Memorial, they could cure his asthma.
My father, Charles, was a patient of Dr. Cameron's. He had a trigeminal neuralgia, it's called, where there's a pain in the temple that radiates into the jaw that apparently is excruciatingly painful. They told him that it was psychosomatic, which it's not, but in those days, what did they know? So they sent him to a shrink. This shrink that he went to was working with Cameron, although we didn't know, so he put my father right into the program.
I was having trouble with my parents. My father and my stepmother decided to put me in the Allen Memorial Institute. They had no idea what went on in there. I was 16 when I was there.
Dr. Cameron pursued a concept he called depatterning, which was meant to reduce patients to an infantile psychological state wherein doctors could take advantage of the person's cognitive vulnerability to attempt to rebuild their mind under the doctor's control. A popular method of choice to achieve this was called psychic driving.
The day that my father was brought to the hospital, they immediately put him on insulin to put him into like an insulin coma. They took clips from the interview with the shrink and put it on tape to run a loop under his pillow while he was put into the sleep treatment.
He also was put in an insulin coma for 36 days with a recording beside him saying that your mother hates you over and over and over and over and over.
That was beside my bed constantly, repeatedly 250,000 and 500,000 times.
Another common method was the use of extreme Page Russell electroshock therapy.
Page Russell shock treatment is approximately 40 to 75 times the strength of a normal shock treatment. So it's really designed to wipe out the memory.
He received 54 high voltage shock treatments, followed by 54 grand mal seizures.
After 27 days of this, they said that they were discouraged because he still had ties to his former life, in that he was asking to see his wife. They decided to give him more Page Russell shock treatments and put him to sleep for another 30 days.
When patients were released from the Allen Memorial, they and their families' lives would never be the same again.
Well, there's a lot I could not remember after I got out of the Allen. When my family came, I was a zombie. I didn't even know who they were.
He never came out the same. He had a blank look in his eye. He didn't know who we were. He didn't know we were his daughters. He lost his job. We went into poverty after he came out.
He had said in his interview with the shrink that I was the apple of his eye. And after he came home, he started beating me not long after.
In 1973, the MKUltra program was terminated, and some of the evidence of its activities was systematically erased.
The whole thing was basically discovered because of a whistleblower named John Marks, who wrote the first book really about the program called The Search for the Manchurian Candidate. There were congressional hearings here in the United States in the mid-70s after it had been exposed. And during those hearings, the CIA finally admitted that this program existed. They admitted that it was probably not the right thing to do, but they feigned innocence.
Despite the congressional hearings and marginal interest in the subject in popular culture, most MKUltra survivors suffered in silence, taking their trauma with them to the grave. Today, having received no formal apology or compensation, the children of some survivors are pursuing a class action lawsuit against the institutions they deem responsible.
The CIA knew that it was breaking, every moral, ethical, and legal law in the books to do these experiments.
They all were behind it. They all knew what they were doing, but they weren't doing it out of care or love. They were doing it out of military and political reasons.
I am on medication now because of what happened to me when I was 16. I have not had any compensation or apology. I want everyone to know in Canada what went on in that horrible, horrible hospital.
While historians and survivors have exposed MKUltra's exploits to the world, much remains unknown about its extent and wider impact. Given the highly sensitive nature of the program's activity, it is likely this will remain the case for years to come.
Yeah. Well,
That's
Okay.
crazy.
Yeah. So basically, what if you look at what happened to most subjects is there was something called depatterning. This is what took place. Essentially, in your brain, you have a series of patterns that are locked in by something called ACT or acetylcholine. And when you learn something, it sets up a pattern in your brain.
oh, okay,
And
like a routine. Yeah.
When you go, like a routine, like a program for a computer.
Yeah.
And so every time you go back to do that same thing, that pattern reasserts itself. Like you, like learning piano. Every, if you practice hard enough, you can eventually you'll get to where things are second nature to you. Every time you sit down to a piano anywhere, the pattern is in your brain that you can play it.
Like riding a bicycle.
And exactly like riding a bicycle. And so what they did to these people is they did their best to break their sense of self. So they did their best to remove people's attachments to their family, attachments to their their life before they got there.
Yeah.
And then they try to assert a new pattern over top of that.
Right.
Like the guy, the one that kind of chills me is that a father, who loved his daughter. She was the apple of his eye, and then when he got back, he hated her and beat her.
Yep.
That was deliberate. They actually, in the first interview they did, they found out that he favored one of his daughters, and so when he was in the coma, they played over and over again that he hated his daughter.
Right.
Because they wanted him to come out of there. Exactly. So then you have a passive man who was affectionate towards his daughter. Now he's beating her. So what does that say to you?
Yeah. Well, that
says
there you go.
Somebody that didn't have. Yeah, that says that somebody that didn't have violence in them before had violence put into them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
well, I was going to say, obviously, that video touched upon the fact that they were put into like insulin comas. Now, I didn't know that, but I do believe that the brain can be more subjective when it's completely relaxed, can't it? So that would explain it.
Yeah.
That would explain that.
Oh, definitely.
Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah, it's trying to get to straight to the subconscious, and the thing that's so scary about this is, what are the applications?
Yeah.
What do you gentlemen think the applications are?
Gee, well, that's like you've got yourself a potential sleeper agent right there, don't you?
Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
Right. Right. And so if they can be violent towards somebody that they have affection for, because you put that in them, then you just give them a target that they have no feelings whatsoever for, and they can do whatever you tell them to do.
You could give them a call on the phone, and there's a trigger word that sets them off or something.
Yep. Oh yeah, they've done countless movies with that scenario. I mean,
exactly. That's why I was thinking.
The one with Charles Bronson in it, Telephone, or whatever the hell it was called, where he was actually a Russian spy. He was sent to the United States to find the sleeper agent to kill him.
Wow.
So,
Manchurian Candidate.
Yeah,
I've not seen that. I've not seen
that.
I've heard of it, but I've not seen it.
Yeah, the original one had Sinatra in it.
Well, there are several that you had to choose from.
I think one of them's got Denzel, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah, there's several you can.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. But what's the premise of the show tonight is that did they actually make killers using this program?
Probably.
Did they actually create killers?
Probably.
Probably.
Well,
did,
I think
there's three examples that we're going to do. Well, there's three examples we're going to talk about tonight. You guys ever hear of Whitey Bulger?
He was a gangster, wasn't
he? Yep.
Was he is that the gangster, the Irish, the Irish
British,
mob?
Or Boston.
Yeah, the Irish mob.
Yeah,
I've
Irish
heard of
mob
him.
in Boston, right?
Yeah, I've heard of him. I don't think I've seen.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Was that Ray Stevenson? I can't remember. It was Don't Kill the Irishman. It was a film. I forget, but I've seen one with the Irish mob, but I don't know if it was him.
Well, there's a recent one called Black Mass that had Johnny Depp in it.
I've not seen it. I've not seen that, but
I've
heard. I know the
Bulger's
character.
Right. Well, he had this really strange turn where he went before he went into prison. He went into prison because he was a bank heister. He was a bank robber.
Yeah.
And but when he came out of prison, he suddenly became a hitman for the mob.
Okay.
That's quite a jump, wouldn't you say?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, after
Yep.
they captured him, later, hold on a second. Let me try this. All right, let's try this. But after they captured him later, he said that he was actually a victim of MKUltra, and he wasn't violent. He wasn't like a killer before. He was violent, but he wasn't a killer. So this is that story.
The law finally caught up to him, and he was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. It was during this prison term that Bulger's story took an even darker turn. Desperate to reduce his sentence, Whitey volunteered to participate in a series of experimental programs being conducted on prisoners. What he didn't fully realize at the time was that he had unwittingly signed up to become a human guinea pig in one of the most infamous secret experiments in U.S. history, the CIA's MKUltra program. This covert and highly illegal initiative aimed to explore mind control techniques using a range of disturbing methods, including the administration of psychoactive drugs like LSD, as well as sensory deprivation and even psychological torture. Participants were subjected to high doses of hallucinogens and put through horrific procedures that aimed to break down their mental and emotional defenses. The MKUltra program was designed to develop methods of controlling human behavior, whether through drug-induced confessions, brainwashing, or weakening the mind through extreme psychological manipulation. Though it officially began in 1953, the program continued in the shadows for 2 decades, wreaking havoc on the lives of countless individuals. For Whitey, the psychological toll of these experiments was profound. Some speculate that his time as a subject in the MKUltra trials only deepened his violent tendencies and helped shape him into the cold, calculating figure he would later become. It's chilling to imagine the impact such a brutal program could have had on an already dangerous man. That Whitey voluntarily submitted himself to such extreme measures reveals a hunger for freedom at any cost, but at what price to his mind and soul? The twisted experiments of MKUltra marked a pivotal point in Whitey Bulger's life, blending the brutal world of crime with a new, even more sinister layer of psychological damage. His journey from a delinquent street thug to one of the most feared and infamous mobsters in America was far from over, but it was already clear that he was no ordinary criminal. What lay ahead for Whitey Bulger was a dark and violent path that would entangle him in both organized crime and government conspiracies. Bulger's time as part of the MKUltra program left scars that would haunt him for the rest of his life. He described the experience as nothing short of a living nightmare, dragging him to the very edges of sanity. The psychological torment he endured was so severe that he feared sharing the full details with anyone, believing that if he did, he might end up permanently confined to a mental institution.
Kind of
Right.
similarly, that's pretty much along the lines of what happened to Charles Manson. He was thrown in prison for, I think, auto theft or something like that, some kind of burglary. And I think it was like in the 50s or something like that. And he was, or early 60s. And he signed up for the program. I guess they offered it to him and he took it. And whatever the deal was. Yeah. And then he was released from prison because he was on a 10-year prison sentence. And they got him out early.
Well, that's not been proven that he took part of MKUltra, but we will get there. We will get there. There is somebody, however, who is also part of the program that this is proven. But you know what? One of the things I'm going to point out. So we got a Whitey. You know why we can't talk to Whitey Bulger about this now? Anybody know?
No.
He is dead? No longer among the living.
Right after he got in. right after he got into jail, he was beaten to death. Almost like the next day after he got there. Yeah. By somebody who said they didn't like snitches.
Totally a coincidence.
Yeah.
Totally a coincidence, right. So we have like 2 bodies so far. We're not even halfway in, but we have 2 bodies so far. Anyway. There you go. Was there a whole lot of shit that's not been proven but really happened? Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Well, I'm not trying to be obtuse, B-Dog. I like I said, it's not like directly proven, but there's enough information that the extrapolation's pretty clear. But we'll get there. We're gonna get there. Just hang with me. But the next guy, all right. So this guy terrorized the country for about 13 years. Anybody ever hear of a dude named they call the Unabomber? Anyone?
Oh yeah.
Does that sound familiar?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
So
he was a genius.
Ted Kaczynski. Yeah, a genius who basically lived as a recluse in a cabin in, like, I think Oregon, obscurity.
I think it was.
Sent out mail bombs all around the country, and so essentially also set up a manifesto about technology, and he happened to have something happen to him when he went to Yale as a 16-year-old kid.
Yeah,
now,
he was a genius.
Before he got there, he was also... Yeah. He was a prodigy. But when he was a child, he got I can't remember what it was. It might have been diphtheria or the whooping cough. But because of it, he was like kept in an oxygen tent for like a month or two, and right after he was born, and nobody was allowed to go in there and hold him or touch him or in any way, shape, or form, and so after that, he grew up. He was a really strange kid who, didn't react to affection very well. But he was also extremely brilliant mathematician. So brilliant that he got early enrollment into Harvard. And while he was there, he was basically pressured into a program. Let me play that.
You've signed up to participate in a psychological study on your university campus. It's run by an esteemed professor. You'll earn some pocket change, and as a side bonus, perhaps contribute to the greater scientific knowledge of humanity. But the next thing you know, you have electrodes strapping you to machines and a camera recording you as a lawyer berates and belittles every belief and value you hold dear. Today, on Nutty History, we're putting a magnifying glass on the Harvard experiments, the mysterious and unethical series of experiments conducted on unwitting students from 1959 to 1962. The year was 1959. The setting was Harvard Yard. I'm sorry, I had to do an accent once. 22 Harvard students were asked, or possibly pressured, to participate in a vague series of psychological experiments that would contribute to the solution of certain psychological problems. You don't have to be a Harvard grad to know that that description is kind of sketchy. The subjects were paid for their time, typically 2 hours a week. For step 1 of the experiment, they were instructed to write an essay about their life philosophy, and were told that they would be debating it with another student. Instead, they were straight up duped. These human guinea pigs were led into a brightly lit room, seated facing a one-way mirror. Through a hole in the wall, a camera was recording everything. Electrodes were attached to their bodies to measure their heart and respiratory rates. The students were then instructed to defend their personal life philosophy. But instead of being met with the promised discussion with a peer, they were interrogated by a lawyer, an older and more experienced opponent whose aim was to humiliate and completely desecrate all of the students' most core beliefs. The interrogator prepared for each student by studying their essays, learning about their hopes and dreams with the aim of causing them to question everything they thought that they knew. The subjected students, who were given code names, described their helplessness during the experience as the verbal abuse continued. While 2 hours might not seem like the end of the world, over the course of 3 years, each student spent an average of 200 hours in the chair, which one student, codenamed Kringle, compared to being strapped into an electric chair. After interrogation, students were forced to watch themselves be berated, reliving the embarrassing ordeal all over again. So what the hell was the point of all of this? And who gave the okay on psychologically traumatizing the school's own students for 3 years? The Harvard experiments were led by Henry Murray, a respected psychology professor whose contributions to the field can still be found in modern-day psychological assessments. Like many of the greats, though, Murray's career wasn't squeaky clean, ethically speaking. By his own words, Murray called the interrogative attacks on the Harvard experiments vehement, sweeping, and personally abusive. So it certainly wasn't a case of good intentions gone wrong. The goals of these experiments weren't and aren't entirely known, and it seemed Murray often deviated from an exact scientific method. One of his graduate students' assistants described him as not the most systemic scientist, and the professor himself often gave varying answers, at times suggesting his data had no value at all. Cool. Well, that's a good reason to emotionally scar a bunch of developing minds. There's other experience from Murray's background, however, that suggests he wasn't conducting these experiments just for kicks. In World War II, he was part of an Office of Strategic Services, later known as the CIA, where he helped assess agents and collaborated on a psychological profile of Hitler. The profile report specifically mentioned that Hitler would commit suicide if defeat was near. How about them apples? He also monitored military experiments on brainwashing. Get your tinfoil hats ready. A popular theory is that Murray's ties with the CIA continued post-World War II and into the Cold War. During this time, the CIA was focused on interrogation training and techniques, how to ensure their own men would stand up to interrogation, and how to effectively break enemy prisoners. This involved tests and experiments designed to psychologically break down the subject. Sound familiar? Much of this testing was encompassed under the notorious Project MKUltra, which would use many unknowing participants to test the use of drugs and procedures in interrogations for potential mind control. Some allege that the Harvard experiments were actually part of MKUltra, which did utilize a variety of other institutions to secretly conduct its operations. Also adding fuel to the fire, MKUltra drugged many of its subjects with LSD, without their consent for your information, thinking that bad acid trips were the key to controlling someone's mind. Henry Murray, funnily enough, also had an interest in psychedelics. Right around the same time period, he supervised and supported a young Harvard researcher by the name of Timothy Leary in a study of hallucinogens. According to our data, that's one coincidence too many. It's impossible to tell what lasting impact the Harvard experiments may have had on its subjects, but one went on to make history in a way that didn't exactly earn himself a spot in the Alumni Hall of Fame. Ted Kaczynski, aka the Unabomber, terrorized the nation with a bombing campaign for 17 years that killed 3 people and injured 23 more. Kaczynski at the time was living as a recluse in a cabin in the woods and used the bombs as a twisted way to draw attention to his anti-technology beliefs, which aren't actually so crazy compared to the methods he used to advertise them. But before the rap sheet, Ted was a young Harvard student, enrolling in the Ivy League school on a scholarship at just 16 years old. Kaczynski was a mathematical whiz who was also unlucky enough to be, according to him, pressured into partaking in Murray's experiments. Many believe that Murray's humiliating and traumatic experience, which Kaczynski called the worst experience of his life, were instrumental in shaping Ted into, a very talented serial killer. As a younger and less mature student, he may have been more susceptible to manipulation and taken a harder hit, psychologically speaking. Others theorize that the ordeal made him increasingly isolated from Harvard society and led to a hatred of technology and psychology that later turned murderous. Prior to undergoing the Harvard experiments, Ted was described by a Harvard health scientist doctor as exceedingly stable. Well, here's some crows you can eat, Doc. Although the methods of Murray's Harvard experiment seem stunningly unethical by today's standards, at the time they didn't really go against any research code of conduct. It wasn't until a whole bunch of other disturbing experiments occurred that the American Psychological Association instituted in-depth guidelines on research ethics and a review board. You know, disturbing experiments like the one where participants were made to believe that they had fatally electrocuted other participants. But that's another video for another day. Let us know in the comments what other deranged debacles from history you'd like to hear about next.
Well, there you go.
Okay.
I was trying to remember
So,
I knew it was the APA. Yeah. I knew it was the APA that was set up after
Go
that.
ahead,
I was trying to remember, but
well, you can imagine that they did this on college campuses, right? Imagine what they did back when there were mental institutions and all the deaths that occurred in mental institutions
over
the decades.
Well, they did those too. They did those too. That's what that one in Canada was about.
Right.
That was a mental hospital. Go ahead.
Maybe there's something to that, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
You
Well,
never know.
so Timothy O'Leary is best known as like the father of the Beat generation. He's the one that pushed the hallucinogens as a way to kind of like
Yeah.
tune in, chill out, and tune out, or something like that. I can't remember the whole thing, but
Yeah.
that was from him, and
I think
so
it was.
he's got a direct tie
I think it was
to
turn on,
the
tune in, and
MKUltra,
drop
and
out.
so that's it.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
where did the anti-war? Where did the biggest anti-war hippies come from?
Oh, they came from the Haight-Ashbury section of San Francisco and other places of similar.
Yeah, and college
atmosphere.
campuses.
Yeah,
And
college campuses. Yeah.
Okay, speaking of Haight-Ashbury, there was a gentleman who, freshly out of
Berkeley.
jail, wound up at the at Haight-Ashbury. It's like a medical or health clinic, and a lot of things happened while he was there. So let me play this first clip.
Before you play that clip, Bunny, did you know that
So
was
if Smith was a part of these experiments, and if Smith was also his parole officer and did know him before he did the 7 years before he got out, which is when it's speculated that Manson was possibly experimented on, and Smith might have been aware of the entire process of it and was supervising him upon his release.
Yeah.
And so that's why every time Manson got arrested, which should have just locked him up, they would just let him go.
Yeah. And Smith, I mean, to give you a little background on Smith, as he told me, he called himself, he goes, I was a rock rib Republican from the Midwest, and I came out, he went to Berkeley, to the School of Criminology to become a criminologist, I think in 65 or 66. He was getting his master's and his PhD, and his special area of study was in the beginning gangs, collective behavior and violence, and then how drugs would make some of these gangs that he had people he was working with students infiltrate to get information. Yeah, this was in Oakland in the ghettos in like 65, 66 when the Panthers were forming. Then in late 66, he decided to become a federal parole officer while he was still writing his dissertation. And he got assigned to something called the San Francisco Project, which was an experimental program run by the federal government to see how different numbers of parole clients, caseloads per parole officer were, it was about recidivism. So if you had the lowest load was 20 clients, the largest was like 50 or 60. Were you able to you would think that 50 or 60 is going to be a lot more difficult, but it always wasn't. So Smith joined that program where he's supposed to be paying much more attention and care to his clients because it's part of a special program called the San Francisco Project. And in fact, he was seeing Manson more than he was even officially supposed to. Things, it gets even crazier. After 68, he stopped being his parole officer. He was actually removed, and he said it was voluntarily so he could focus more on his drugs and violence research at the clinic. Manson's 3 or 4 women followers got arrested in Mendocino. They had lured a couple young boys into a house, given them LSD. Manson had sent them up to Mendocino to recruit people for the family. The 4 women were arrested. One of them, Mary Bruner, had the first baby with Manson in the group. And Roger Smith and his wife, Carol, went up to Mendocino and petitioned the court to take foster custody of the child until until her case was resolved. So they were the foster parents of Manson's son. I mean, everything was irregular about this. that case is pretty interesting. So Mary Bruner and Susan Atkins, two women who actually killed for Manson in 1969, were they were convicted of contributing to the delinquency of minors, illegal drug possession, and without a trial, they pled out. And then there was what they call the sentencing phase, where a probation officer is assigned to decide whether or not they should be sent to prison or given probation, supervised probation. So I got access to their files, Bruner's and Atkins, and in the file were recommendations to the court by Roger Smith and his wife saying, these are good women, they shouldn't go to prison. Susan Atkins, who, stabbed Sharon Tate. And
is that proven? Because she said it, and then
she
also
went back
said
and
that
forth
she didn't.
back and forth. Yeah.
Is it proven? Because Tex Watson clearly was a murderer, right?
Yeah.
And so she had said that Tex did it. She couldn't do it, but this was later on.
Yeah, her
right?
first accounts were that she did it, and then when she testified to the grand jury, she said that she didn't do it. She held Sharon while Tex stabbed her.
Right.
Later in prison, she said that she did do it, and then she changed again. She'd go back and forth, but she was pretty brutal. And Mary Bruner and Susan Atkins were given probation instead of being sentenced, partially based on Roger Smith's recommendation. Roger Smith identified himself as a former parole officer, with his expertise. And he said he had known both of them for 2 years, and which was also a lie. He had only known Susan. He could have known Susan for 2 years. He knew her for about a year. He did know Mary pretty well. And he never disclosed that he was Manson's parole officer. And Manson's identified in these same files as the person who lured these women into crime, that they were his communal wives, that they would steal for him, prostitute themselves for him. And the other people that they interviewed, the probation officer argued against it, saying they're going to go right back to this guy who's down in Los Angeles and continue their life of crime, but the judge released them.
What a wicked web.
Yeah. Very tangled.
Oh, yeah. Well, one of the things before we went to that video, one of the connections is to the Haight-Ashbury Medical Clinic was a thing called the National Institute of Mental Health. And the National Institute of Mental Health, I believe, was associated with a particular individual called Sidney Gottlieb.
Oh, that's the guy from the CIA, wasn't it?
Yeah, the National Institute of Mental Health, helped finance Haight-Ashbury, the clinic.
Hell, that's
So
like
that's
Gottlieb
like, I don't
was
know.
yes.
You could
Gottlieb
consider
was
it like
CIA,
a shell
wasn't
company,
Yeah, that's right. I saw that in the thing. Gottlieb was CIA.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Guess
It's all
who?
over.
Guess who took over for Gottlieb?
One of the Bushes. No.
I don't know.
Dr. Fauci.
Holy crap. Our good old friend. Well, there you go.
Good old Fauci.
Yeah.
Well.
Good old Fauci.
Yeah. Yeah. Gottlieb. Not immediately, but he held the same position later on. It's not that far away from Gottlieb. It might be like once removed, but Fauci probably knew Gottlieb and probably worked under him. So
more than likely,
it's all
yeah.
incestuous. They all know each other.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe they shared
So,
ideas. Who knows?
Well, I was going to play this other clip, but we're kind of running up against the time here, so I won't play it. But there was another guy who had an office at the Haight-Ashbury Institute, Who was that, Wookie? Do you have the name?
That's Dr. Jolly West.
Dr. Jolly West. Yeah. And Dr. Jolly West also had a direct connection to who?
Jack Ruby.
Jack Ruby. So once again, we have somebody who from MKUltra, who's directly connected to MKUltra, who is connected to someone who wound up killing people. In this case, Jack Ruby shooting Lee Harvey Oswald when he had no history of violence before. And what happened immediately after he shot Lee Harvey Oswald?
Well, he went to jail, and before he could go to trial, the last person to visit him before he suffered his mental breakdown was Dr. Jolly West, with no cameras, no recordings, and completely private, so there was no observation. And the next day, good old Jack Ruby woke up and was completely lost it. His whole mind, everything. He was screwed.
Yeah.
I guess they gave him one of those.
They blamed it on.
He couldn't stand trial.
Yeah. Well, they blamed it on his cancer diagnosis, which was a surprise to everybody. He suddenly had cancer.
Yeah.
But so that guy,
and it suddenly drives you nuts as well, apparently.
Right. But that guy, it's kind of like somebody recently who had no diagnosis, and now suddenly he's eat up with cancer. Somebody, I can't remember the name. Somebody recently. Anyway.
Former President Biden.
That guy. That guy. Right. Anyway, it just so happens this Jolly character, Jolly West, shows up in Haight-Ashbury at the same location where Charles Manson wound up, and Charles Manson, no matter what crimes he was committing, kept getting put out on the street because of this parole officer who kept like signing off on him. And this parole officer happened to be pursuing a doctorate in criminology, and was participating in a program that was investigating the violent matrices that are caused by gangs of people together, and how you can manipulate them into violence.
Yeah,
that was what this project was about. And a guy who's directly attached to him, who by all accounts is illiterate, suddenly has the ability to manipulate this group of kids through the use of lysergic acid, which showed up in every single step, every thing so far. And like Ted Kaczynski, it showed up with him, Whitey Bulger, it showed up with all those people in an institute in Canada. And now lysergic acid is not cheap. Lysergic acid is created in a lab. It's not exactly something you can cook like meth.
All right.
And yet, an illiterate individual kept showing up with tabs of LSD to give to his followers, who he manipulated into murderous acts.
Yep.
And
they
talk about that. Go ahead.
Good old Charlie Manson.
Yeah. Well, it just
Yeah.
while he never killed anybody, all of his followers did pointed at him as being the person who talked them into it or ordered it, and broke them down to the
Right,
point where they
right.
followed the orders.
Mm-hmm.
And so it seems like every step that we see people who didn't have violence before suddenly showing up being capable of incredible acts of violence. And so
Right.
I mean, the Manson family was just a bunch of hippies, and suddenly if I've seen like pictures of the crime scene of the Tate murder.
It's
And
pretty gruesome.
All right.
they just ruined it. It's gruesome. It's horrific.
Yeah.
It's like, and that's all the murders that they did was just like rage murders. They were acts of animalistic, like people that just weren't like working as humans
Brutality.
anymore.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Ooh.
And I'm not like trying to make connections that aren't there. There's like direct connections at each step and everything that we're talking about to the MKUltra program.
Oh yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and you know that when it was discovered or disclosed through whistleblowers in '73, the CIA director destroyed what he thought was all the documentation of that program, which the destruction of all that stuff was illegal. The MKUltra program itself was illegal. Everything that all these people were involved with doing to people were illegal. My question is, how many of those people went to prison?
Right.
Probably
well, according to
nobody.
what I watched, all the people that oh no, they all died fat and happy on the government dime with very fat government pensions.
Pensions and yep. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I kind of think programs like
job
that
well
are
done,
not
I guess.
done. Yeah.
Job well done, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, here's your fat pension. Yeah, for destroying half a generation.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I mean, we're talking about the
absolutely
whole
right.
hippie.
Yeah, nobody goes to jail.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Right.
Well, and you have to understand too.
Well,
okay,
if
so
you were to talk about, go ahead.
I was going to say, not only was the MKUltra program going on, the CIA called what they were doing with Haight-Ashbury and other places with these psychedelics was called Operation Chaos. Well, the FBI was doing their own thing too. COINTELPRO. And they were trying to do the same thing to all these different political groups, the hippies and all this other stuff, and trying to infiltrate and persuade, manipulate, and all this other shit.
Right.
So, and COINTELPRO was illegal. So,
right. Well,
I guess it's only
was there
illegal
any
until
of
they
them-
get caught.
Was there any of them that weren't illegal? I mean,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah.
Well, there were actually a lot of the stuff that they did. There were no laws against it on the books when they did it, which is how they all got out of it. Because once MKUltra came to light, there was evidently they were relying on the fact that there were no laws on the books preventing this stuff.
True.
Experimentation.
That's true. The only thing is the mission statement And the oath that CIA operatives, officers, and everybody else took was that they were not supposed to operate on U.S. soil. They were operating on U.S. soil. Doing all these, except what they did in Canada. But here in the United States, they were operating on U.S. soil, which is a violation of that. So, yeah.
Blame Canada! Blame Canada!
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the way they got around that is that these people, they were scientists. They weren't officially CIA. They didn't get like checks from the CIA.
No,
so
they got them from the shell
The way
companies.
they got around that was we're not operating. Yeah, we're not operating on American soil. These people are operating on American soil. It just so happens that we're funding it through a switch out. You know, like the U.S. aid, maybe.
Yeah,
Things like that.
USAID type of situation.
Which was started by which was started by JFK. Right before he was gunned down in Dallas, and then immediately thereafter, a lot of the funding for MKUltra came from these NGOs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So this stuff is still like happening now.
Oh, I believe it.
It's not MKUltra officially. Yeah, MKUltra officially was discontinued in like 1973. But I think what we're seeing now is we're just seeing like the surface.
Unofficially, it didn't end until the 80s, I think.
Right. Well,
or maybe
but if you look at that generation,
just change the name. They just rebrand it. They just rebrand these things as something else, don't they?
Natural causes. Yeah.
Yeah. You if somebody blows your head off, you die naturally.
Natural causes.
Naturally.
Yeah. He suffered
naturally. Yes.
Allergic reaction to
they
lead.
Yeah, as one does. But a lot of these programs, they'll just rebrand them as something else, don't they? You know what I mean? They'll just call it something else. They'll change the parameters a little bit.
Just call it something else.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, what I think, though, is when I look at the hippie generation and you see these people are still protesting now, and they're protesting against their own, against they're basically protesting against their own future, the future of their family, the future of their grandchildren, if they have them. And it's like, why are these people so reflexively, like, ideologically bent? You know, why do they still talk about like the 60s are still happening? Why are they singing "We Shall Overcome" now? And I think that a lot of these lessons they learned.
I was gonna use an example of something that's a bit twisted, and that would be, well, if you vote for Donald Trump, I will disown you.
Yeah,
so
there
that's
you go.
A bit nuts, isn't it? The way that people cut the way that people are
maybe
so
TDS
in that
is
sort of mentality.
Not only that, but
maybe
what
TDS
happened,
is actually MKUltra.
Well, here's the thing. What about all of the people who got disowned by their families because they didn't get the freaking clot shot?
Right. Right.
And there's still apparently to this day there's still family splits over it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
are you saying that liberal politics is MKUltra?
Well, it would make sense, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it make sense?
It does, because
it does now.
A lot of the things that they're espousing right now,
otherwise,
it doesn't. Yeah, a lot of the things they're espousing right now on the left-hand side of the political spectrum is completely asinine and stupid, and definitely undermines their
Right.
own existence as human beings or members of their community or country.
Yes.
They're voting against or protesting
Why
against
are
their
these
own
people-
freaking advantages and future. It's insane.
Well, I mean,
nuts.
why would it's like why would a judge who is there to hear a case where a man, an illegal invader to our country, who was let out of jail early, and promptly turned around and beat a older man and older woman almost to death, and they're in the court, right, to testify against him, risking their lives to testify against him, and the ICE shows up, and she basically throws away her whole entire career to escort this guy out the door.
Yeah, the judge. Yeah.
Who she knows did this violent stuff, and she threw her entire career away for it. This guy, it's like the insanity of it.
Yeah.
But it would make sense if they took these rules or these things that they learned from these MKUltra programs on how to reprogram people and to basically be active against their own benefit, actively against their own families, actively against their own country, and against their own perpetuation or against their own future.
Yeah.
And hate anything that they're told to hate.
Well,
and
why be the enemy when you can turn people into idiots and they'll just do it themselves?
Exactly.
Yeah. It's
like
the term is out there, and it's been used for almost a century, and it's called the useful idiot. And the useful idiot was coined by Joseph Stalin, in that people that were convinced that communism or dictatorship was great, and the monarchy and capitalism and free thought and independence were all independence was evil in some way. And so he used those useful idiots, as he called them, as the street thugs, as the boots on the ground, and tore up families and institutions and schools and everything else. But we have them here, and they have them in Europe, as in Britain as well, because you have all these people who are convinced that somehow all of a sudden they come out of the woodwork and they're convinced, and they all look the same insofar as they've got that death stare and soulless eyes and everything else, and they're screeching and screaming and fighting, and they don't want to listen to anybody. They don't want to discuss anything. They want to beat you up or burn stuff down.
What's the bets that a lot of these university professors and all that now are, and they're teaching and indoctrinating all the students?
They're probably people that came from these MKUltra programs in colleges.
Yeah. Oh yeah, probably. Yep.
Yeah.
And
they're just,
passing
it on.
But when you watch how these people
pass it on through the curriculum,
right? Exactly, through the curriculum, through the news media, and it's and sometimes it gets overwhelming to see the when your eyes are opened to see how they twist everything, and it's like, why does and we always say this all the time, we're like, why do people still buy this? And maybe the reason they're still buying it is because MKUltra, the fruit of MKUltra was to create a passive, obedient populace who will basically upon upon your orders, work against their own interest.
Yeah.
And their own future, and against
the powers that be know human psychology.
Yeah.
So they know what buttons to press. They know how to stir the pot. That's how they get things done.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, and in certain situations where, as an example, let's say there's a protest somewhere, and let's say there's a bunch of people who don't want to have oil in their town. Okay, they don't want oil wells or anything like that.
Right.
Like that. But then you have, and they seem to be more militant than anybody else. But the group that you're a part of is pro-oil, and I want this oil well in there because it's going to bring jobs, it's going to bring money, and et cetera, prosperity, right? So what happens is your group, whatever the group is, the Coalition for Free Oil, okay, let's say, as an example, you have people come in and you have all kinds of members. You have people that you know, and you have people you don't know, but you have people that know the people that you know, but you bring all these people in. Well, what COINTELPRO does in the FBI is that they sneak people in to your little group. Okay. And they're going to keep tabs on you, and they're going to be your buddy, your friend. But what they actually are is the provocateurs. They're the ones that actually instigate the shit starting. So you go to these protests that you're for oil, and the people on the other side are maniacs anyway. But what they do is they try to convince somebody in your group. We've seen this before, Bunny. Somebody in your group to go do something that's wrong or illegal or a crime. Okay? They're the provocateurs pushing people to go do bad stuff, right? Trying to break a law or
January 6th.
Yes. Yeah.
There we go again.
But that's just an example. That's what
we saw this.
Does. They stick these people in your little groups, and they keep tabs on you. I don't know, a la the Governor Whitmer kidnapping fiasco bullshit that never fucking was going to happen anyway.
There was a protest.
Which guys are still in jail for?
Yeah. There was a protest here last year, I think, and there was a provocateur, and he made some sort of gesture. And it was picked up by somebody, and it's the kind of gesture that a security personnel would make or a police officer would make, and it was directed towards the authorities, as if to say, go, or we're kicking off or something. So
yeah.
You know?
Oh yeah, Yep. I know what you're talking about. You give them the signal.
Well, we saw this just the other day in the Oval Office when Trump had the South African people sitting there, and he showed them all the proof and news media, all the proof of what's happening in South Africa, and basically they sat there and the news media right on the heels of that denied the whole thing, even showing he
ambushed them.
He
ambushed them with fake.
Right out of the gate, right after he was done rolling the film.
And their objection was, why do you bring that up? And it's like, go ahead.
Why do you bring it? Yeah, they were trying to basically run cover for it, trying to say that, there's no way to fact check this. We don't know that this is actually factual, or some bullshit like that we're trying to say. And it's like, dude, there's the video. It's not been edited. So.
But it's like, maybe this gaslighting, maybe that came from these tests of these learning all the lessons they learned from MKUltra, And now
Oh,
we're
yeah.
all starting to break the code, or we're starting to break because when I was in school, I was taught white people are evil from the time I was in kindergarten all the way till I was in college, and I had a professor in college that kept shoving it down my throat, and then suddenly I was like, wait a second, I don't feel any guilt for this, and I started pushing back, and she looked totally shocked that somebody would actually say, well, that was then, this is now, and I don't have any guilt over this. And it was
Yeah,
like it was
exactly.
a novel, but it's like, well, anyway, so the premise of the show today is are we proving not advocating for violence, right?
Yeah.
But so the question of the day was MKUltra producing killers? And I don't know about you guys, but I going down this rabbit hole has kind of like opened up my eyes to a lot of things. I now think that the whole entire hippie movement was MKUltra, and so that explains a lot about their inexplicable behavior for me. And so
Well,
I'm gonna
definitely
say
they were
definitely
manipulated. There's
confirmed
no
for me.
question. Yeah, they were definitely manipulated. There's no question about that.
Well,
Definitely
I'm going to
manipulated.
go so far as to say that I do think that definitely the ultimate outcome was to produce killers, people willing to kill, or people able to kill,
I'm not
teach
going to
people
disagree with
to
you.
make killers.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm not going to
What do you
disagree
think,
with
bro?
you on that.
It's up to you.
Yep.
Girl.
No.
What do you think?
I think they were that. Yep. That was their intent. I believe that. I believe that was their intent to make killers or sleeper agents or something to that effect.
Yeah.
All righty. Well, let me check my poll. Gonna closing my poll.
I forgot mine.
5, 4, 3. No problem.
I forgot mine.
I've got 3 votes. All of them are confirmed. So there you go.
B-Dog, how do you vote in the chat? Jens,
So
how do you vote in the chat? Oh, here's Cotton. How do you vote in the chat?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's just called something else. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I said just not too long ago. They just changed the name and
they just changed the name and
whatnot.
Plausible deniability. Oh, that's done. We don't do that no
Shake
more. That agency. Yeah, right. Whatever.
They'll maybe shake
they call
it
it
up a little
things
bit
like
and
Antifa now.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Antifa, BLM. Yeah, I believe it. It's still going. I'm sure it is.
And,
yeah, the things that we're seeing right now.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
Definitely.
Well, you got a bunch of people like keying cars thinking that they're going to damage Elon Musk,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and
Yep.
All right. So, good conversation, gentlemen.
That's
good
why.
Conversation.
That's why it was. That's why it was raining earlier. Elon Musk was crying at all those people skiing the cars.
Well, now we know why they think something's so stupid and inexplicable. So
yeah, Cotton Ministries says, what do we know about the guy that took a shot at Trump? Nothing. Absolutely. And they're not even telling him.
Exactly.
We know nothing.
And they immediately destroyed evidence on location. At the location, they destroyed evidence big time.
Yeah, they just wiped that kid. They wiped that kid off the
Yeah, they
face
did.
of the
They
planet.
took him. Yep. They don't want you knowing anything about him or anything.
Nope. All right, so I think we can just go ahead and say
confirmed. Yeah.
Definitely confirmed. Definitely confirmed.
Hang on a second. What the hell?
Whoop.
What the hell is that?
I'm,
You've been at MKUltra.
it's the Chi-Coms are spying on me. What the hell? Prism Live Studio. I've never used it. I have it, but I've never used it. What the hell? Stupid. What the hell?
Well, thank you everybody for coming tonight. Thank you for the, this show's gonna kind of haunt me for a while, I think. Yeah, that's definitely a rabbit hole. Definitely a rabbit hole.
Oh my God, yeah. Like I told you earlier, just check it out. Just looking into to Charlie Manson. Holy shit! It just that goes like an octopus everywhere too, and a lot of these same people were involved with that. So that's nuts. Holy shit! But yeah,
it is. It really is.
Good show. Good subject matter.
Anyway,
indeed.
FYI,
thank you guys.
FYI, I'm not streaming tomorrow. If anybody's interested, I will go back on Sunday, the first weekend. Well, next weekend, a week from tomorrow, I'll be back on Sunday morning. So, anyway, speaking of next week, have we got an idea of what we want to do next week, or are we going to formulate that later?
Either you have any ideas?
You know what? There was something I saw earlier a couple days ago. I thought it would be a good subject. It's escaped me right now.
Yeah,
I've been brainwashed. I don't know.
Damn you, MKUltra!
I know, right? So damn fluoride in the water.
All right.
All right.
Just keep your eyes out. We'll have a subject by next week, but we will see you next Saturday night. Same cryptid channel, same conspiracy hour. And so bye, everybody. You have a very good week. We'll see you then.
See you, everybody. Have a good Memorial weekend.
As soon as this pops up. Come on.
Yeah. As soon as the delay is not delayed anymore.
Talks amongst yourselves.